Let's get the obvious disclaimers out of the way, and we'll get right back to it. Presented by XABCDtrading.com. Want to know what could shake the market this week and where we could see the biggest moves? Here are the highlights of what you need to know that could rattle the market. Whether you trade futures, Forex, or stocks, it's all right now. Brought to you by XABCDtrading.com.
All right, guys, welcome. Should be able to see my screen and everything else. We started to do a few of these live streams. If you guys like them, let me know somehow, and I will keep doing them. We do have one coming up next week that we're going to do, which has to do with one button order entry, but not just like hotkeys buy or sell, but how do you actually get it to do the quantity you want, as well as add an ATM strategy template just with one click of a button. And that's what we're going to be looking at next week. At least that's the plan. So feel free to subscribe if you want to get those notifications. Otherwise, we're going to do today's session on the market analyzer and how to make it more useful. Actually, you can't see my market analyzer on my chart right now. This is what my market analyzer looks like. Now, you don't have our pattern software, you might not have it, so this is not going to be as useful to you. But what we're going to do is use basically the defaults of Trader 8 to come up with something that is more useful. So we're going to take this empty market analyzer window that we have right now and show you some of the stuff that you might find actually useful to add to your own market analyzer, or if you were to create a new one. So I'm going to take this from the beginnings to some more advanced things. If you guys have questions along the way, that's the whole point of doing this live. Type them in, and we will definitely hit those all off. But when it comes to the market analyzer window, you're going to open that up to your main NinjaTrader 8 control panel. Underneath the new menu, you can say market analyzer, and you get this blank thing, which is totally useless. But we're going to change that. So the first thing that you'll want to do is probably add in an instrument. Now, I would recommend only adding in one as you build your market analyzer, and that way things will be a lot more snappy. And then if you wanted to add in like a whole list of what you just saw, that is going to be something that you can do later after your market analyzer is already configured, because every time you change something, it's going to go back and reload the market analyzer. So it can take some time if you have a ton of symbols, and depending on how many time frames you're looking at and all that sort of thing. So I'm just going to add something simple in here right now. We'll add in a futures, and we will add in a Forex, and I will add in a crypto. Maybe we'll add in something like Bitcoin. There we go. And we're getting all that data in there, so that's a good sign. The yellow flashing is just new tick data coming in. But this is all stuff that you can kind of play around with this data. Now, knowing the current price, the bid price, and the last price is probably not that useful. So they call these columns, and we're going to adjust them, and we're going to apply filters to them, and we're going to add colors to them, and we're going to change them, and we're going to make it more something that you can use. So when we get to this part of it, one of the first things I like to do is we can right click in here and add a label row, and we can call this, for instance, futures. It's a very easy way to kind of break up your market analyzer into different areas depending on what markets you might trade. If you don't trade different markets, then you might not use labels in this way. You might have them broken down into I guess maybe more frequent or high volume sort of symbols. You can do a lot of different things with it as far as your labels and organizing things. let me just put that in there. But that's essentially how you can do with labels. And once you have, for instance, here, I'm going to move this down. Let me just click and drag them, move them around. Once I have it the way I want, you're going to want to save things frequently just so you don't have to redo things. If you were to close this window right now and reopen it, it would be blank again. So when it comes to saving, you want to go down to templates and you want to either click save as, or you can save it as the default. I think that you should probably first save it as something, and then after that, you can save it as the default once you have it the way you want it. But that would be obviously very important. Now, when you do that, when you click save, you can come in here and you can see at the bottom, this is often missed, is it says save instruments. So that's going to save all these instruments that we've already added into our template. Otherwise, when you open it back up again, you're going to have all your columns, but you're not going to have the instruments that are there, right? And there's obviously good reasons for that. Maybe it's like a weekly hot list and you want to add those instruments as you go along. Maybe it's something that you constantly look at all the time where you actually want to save those instruments into your template. So that's what the save instruments for. Very handy, very useful. But it's just that very bottom little button there at the bottom underneath what you name it that you want to have checked off. Okay, so getting back to things. Columns. Columns are like the current price, the bid price, and the last price, and we can change these around. I'm going to give you an example of what you can do with them that you might find interesting, but let's just say you come into columns and you want to look at something like an indicator. You want to add an indicator in there. So you can go down to your indicator column, double click on it, and you will see here, it will ask you what indicator you want to have. So maybe you want something like ATR. Okay, so how many pips or ticks or points or whatever it moved in the last 14-day period. So you get an average sort of idea on how much something might be moving in the last 14 bars. Now this is going to be on a 1-minute chart. Unless we change this, we can say a 5-minute chart, and we can hit apply. And you can see this is going to be the ATR value on a 5-minute chart for that indicator. So maybe you might use something like I mean, you can pick anything that's inside of NinjaTrader, basically, say RSI, right? And you want to know what the RSI value is on that specific time frame. Then you can have it show up here, and you can say, okay, well, this is 14, this is 55, this is 35, and then all of a sudden you'll see that it's red, right? And what does that mean? How do you control it? So these are sell conditions, and you can add these in however you want. You can change them, you can modify them, but you'll see it underneath your column where it says configured and it says sell conditions. And in here it says if it's less than 30, then it's going to have a red background, white text, and it's going to essentially put the value in there because the text field's empty, right? So it's going to put the value. If it's greater, we're going to see this as green as a background with white text if it's above 70, right? So you can play with those, you can change them however you want. But this is a very useful feature, and I'll give you an idea of why. Let's just say you want to add profit loss to it, okay? So you wanted to have whatever the profit loss would be for this specific data, okay? Seeing 0 across the board doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So you can have a, let's just say a condition in here for your sell that says, okay, well, if it's, let's just say if the value is 0, then the text, instead of writing a whole bunch of zeros, it's just going to be a dash. Okay, very simple way of expressing your data, but very useful, because now when you hit apply, instead of seeing all those zeros, you just see less text on your screen, right? It's just a dash. Now, if it wasn't 0, then you're going to have a number there, right? You can say if the number is greater than 0, make the text green. If it's less than 0, make it red, right? If it's negative value, right? You've lost money, make it red. So that's where a lot of this stuff when it comes to sell conditions can be extremely useful. So some of the charts that you have, or some of the columns that you will be using, you might find interesting to have. Now, a lot of these that are available, probably not something you're going to want to use on a daily basis. But let's just say you wanted something in here like days until rollover. I find is, if you trade futures, useful. It's going to tell you how many days you have until that contract rolls over. So I have 73. Again, a useful sell condition for something like this would be to go into your columns. I'm actually going to remove the ones I don't find useful. So that is going to be my current bid and last price. And for my days until rollover, we're going to say, okay, if it's above, we'll say if it's above a week, so let's do 7 days, we're going to say the text is going to be green, right? And we're going to leave the text blank because we actually want the value of how many days is there. And we can just say if this is not equals but greater or equals to 7, okay, and hit apply. And now that text that was there that said 73 is green. Now it's not going to go red when it's below 7 unless we put that sell condition in there. So we're going to go back inside and we're going to say add another condition where if it's less than 7, then this is going to be red, right? Now you also might decide that, okay, look, I don't need to know how many days are left in that contract unless it's something I need to pay attention to. Maybe it's less than 7 or whatever it is. So we're going to say if it's greater than 7, then we're just going to put in a dash because we don't need to know about it as the value, right? So we just say okay and hit apply, and it's just going to be a dash there and we're all good. It's up to you on how, of course, you want to run your market analyzer, but it can be very useful for futures traders to have days until rollover into your configured columns. So another one I really like is having a mini view of the chart. Now this is one that was recently added, or I should say more recently added in a release in NinjaTrader, where you can actually have a little mini view of that chart and where price has gone recently to know, perhaps if you're near an area of support resistance or something else that you can visually tell from a mini chart. So this is your little mini chart over here, and you can adjust these columns as you need. But that's going to be obviously something that where's my market analyzer? There we go. It might be handy to have if you have a long list of instruments that you're looking at from a day-to-day basis, to be able to see what that mini chart is showing you. Now, of course, all of these can be configured underneath your columns. So all these charts, you can have it, a different color. I've looked at using things like green and whatnot, but I do find that it's too much of a distraction. So I kind of like the default of like a dim gray or something that's not so in your face. But you can also say that, for instance, if where is it now? If price has changed a certain amount, that you want to have that text in like a red or a green if it's gone up or below a certain value, and that could be handy for a column instead of maybe like a mini chart. But it has been one that's been added more recently, and that is something that a lot of people are finding more useful, is have a mini chart like that instead of having a whole bunch of windows open that have like little mini charts in them, which some software does. So that could be something that you might want to focus on for a column in your market analyzer. Okay, market analyzer works with alert logs, or how does that part of it work? Yeah, we'll get into alerts in just a second here, because then we can take this one step further and say, okay, well, if RSI or whatever it is, or the days until rollover hits a certain number, let's trigger an alert based off of that. And we can have NinjaTrader's alert window, which is probably underutilized by a lot of people, pop up with an alert in there already for us. So getting through some of these columns, another one that is handy for people if they're new to trading, they don't know what every instrument is or what it's for, is the description. So you can actually add in here a description to know what you're looking at. In this case, you can see it says the E-mini, S&P 500 futures, right? So if you added in a whole bunch of, I'll just do this for a sec here, futures, we'll say select all. Right, so it's going to load up the mini chart for every single one of these, which is, again, why I was saying, you might want to configure your market analyzer template first before you add a whole bunch of stuff to it. But you can see here that it's already showing you like crude oil futures, DAX, gold, E-mini, like what each contract would be. And then it goes through RSI and it bases those conditions and colors off of the data. And days until rollover, you can see, oh no, like gold is rolling over soon, where we got 1 day left, and you can see what the mini chart's like on it. So that's how you might find some of this stuff useful. Another column that can be handy, no matter what stage you're at, is one called notes. Now this is what it sounds like. It gives you a text field to type notes into. I find this really handy when you've already analyzed something and you want to just say, 4 hours, something, or whatever, I don't know, whatever could make sense to you. That's something that you can just keep notes in for in the market analyzer. And it's not data that you're necessarily making conditions off of or filter changes, but what you can do is you can say, okay, well, look, if it's, like if the note starts with high, then maybe you make it green because it's high priority or something. Or if there's text in there, if there's anything in there, then let's make it a bright green and all our notes are going to be in green. So you can really kind of customize it however you want. But knowing how to use an indicator on your market analyzer, things like days until rollover, your mini charts, the descriptions, the notes are all probably going to be useful. You do have to, and I'm going to show you a tip here that is going to save you a ton of time. But this is RSI on a 1 minute. So let's just say you wanted to scan a bunch of time frames. You would come in here and you would say, okay, well, I'm going to change this label so it's more meaningful. And I'm just going to say RSI 1 minute. Okay. And just press apply and you'll see that this label is going to change. It's going to say RSI 1 minute. Looks a lot cleaner. But now let's just say I want the RSI on the 1 minute, the 5 minute, the 15, the 30, and the 60, right? So then you got to come down here and you have to say, okay, where's my indicator again? And then I'm going to find RSI. There we go. And I'm going to add in all my conditions. I'm going to change this from a 1 minute to a 5 minute and press OK. And that can be really time consuming, especially if you have a lot of conditions. And I'll give you a brief example of that. Let me just flip my cam here. This, hopefully that's coming through. Here, let me see if we can focus on that a bit better. Is pretty detailed with the cell conditions. You can see all the colors, but let me go into my columns here, and you can see if I go down to cell conditions, the very bottom, I got 27 of them in here, right? So depending on what the pattern is, it's going to be in a different color and it's going to say a different pattern name. So there's 27 different cell conditions on every configured, let's just say, indicator. So imagine RSI and it has 27 different cell conditions. That's something that you're obviously not going to want to redo every single time. It's going to be a massive headache, and it's going to take an incredible amount of time just to get things up and running again, right? Let me move this around, sorry. There we go. So that's something that you're probably going to want to avoid. And the way that you do that is once you have RSI set up, let me just get back into our example one, and you have all your sell conditions in there, go down in the bottom right. This is very tiny. Let me zoom in. And you'll see it says the word preset, right? So if you click on that, you can say save, and you can save that. It just did it. Like, it doesn't really say, hey, I just saved it, but it saves it, and it saves all your sell conditions already in there. So then all you have to do the next time you want to add RSI to your chart is you go down to where it says indicators, and you double click on that, and you'll see RSI already got added in, and it has my sell conditions. So all I have to do at that point is change this to a 5-minute, right? So then I'll come back to my indicator, I'll do it again. I'm going to put 15-minute on there, and then I'm going to do it again. Where's my indicator? And I'm going to say this is going to be a 30-minute, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to add in a 60-minute, and we'll do it one more time, and I'm going to add in a 4-hour, right? And then you can see how much quicker that was, and they all have the same sell condition. So you do this once, right? And then you just duplicate your presets for whatever that is. So do one indicator at a time, depending on what you use, put in your sell conditions, and just duplicate it that way. Now, RSI 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So you might want to rearrange these a bit and bring this down. You can see there's a little down button in the bottom there, up or down, and then line these all up, and it can be 1 minute, and then this could be a 5-minute, and all we're going to have to do at this point is change our labels, and this is going to be is this a 15-minute, and then the next one is going to be a 30-minute, and this one is going to be a 60-minute, and you can see how much faster it is to do it this way. This is going to be a 4-hour, and just hit apply, and then all those conditions were just copied across, and we have all those time frames in there. You can see it says 5, 15, 30, 60, 4-hour, right? And we have all of our RSI settings already in there with all the sell conditions. So definitely an easy way to replicate things once you have it, if you do use it on multiple time frames. And the market analyzer is great for things like that, because you don't need to have, let's just say, every single chart open on every time frame in order to know what's happening on it, right? So it is something that you do want to kind of pay attention to make sure that you are getting at least the data back that is going to be useful to you, and hopefully, if it's done correctly, save you time, right? This is the whole point of the market analyzer. It's like your workhorse. It's going to do all this for you so that you don't have to. And it's just a matter of making it useful to you and however you might trade. So like I was saying, like with how we do things here, we look for patterns. Having the patterns on the chart is one thing, but maybe you also look at a pattern that lines up with a certain RSI value, and you want to have that right beside the column of where the pattern is. So you have the pattern, then you have your RSI value, and that would be a lot more useful to somebody that uses RSI, right? Where if you don't use RSI, maybe you just want to know how much something's moving, or you want to know what your exposure of how much a position size you have on any specific instrument is. That could be useful to you. Build it into your market analyzer, right? And that's the way it really should be when it's coming to how to make this market analyzer useful to you. So keep that in mind. Now, we talked about sell conditions. I'm going to come back in here and we're going to talk about alerts now. So instead of going into columns, you have your alerts. You can have an alert triggered based off any static condition. I'm going to say static because it's not dynamic, meaning that you can't say if RSI is, I'm trying to think of a good example here. If this value is above or below a certain moving average, so you don't know what that is, then that's a dynamic field, right? If you say if RSI is above 70, then that's static, because 70 is a static number. If you say whatever a moving average value is, that's not something you can do right now in the market analyzer. I've been told that we might be able to expect something like that in a later release. It's definitely a feature that they have, and I think based off conversations with NinjaTrader and their project management team, that it's something that we'll probably get. But of course, until it's in the code, who really knows, right? So right now it's static resources. So if you want to create an alert condition, that's going to be static as well. So we can say the condition is going to be, let's just say if RSI on the 1 minute is above a numerical value of 70, right? Then that's something that we can put in there. Now, I guess there is above or below as an option, but I'm not too sure how that would work with a moving average. Anyways, so we can put in an alert condition like that saying RSI greater or equal to, let's just say 70. And then we can have a whole bunch of actions in here. So whether it's a pop-up box, maybe it's a sound, maybe you want to send yourself an email when that happens. That's all something that you can do. Now, that's going to trigger into, and this is getting to your question, Frank, into your alert log. And you can actually have it, this is going to be the background for that text in your alert log. So if it's something bad, I mean, maybe you'll have it in a red background with a white foreground. You can play around with that, but then that's going to be thrown into your alert log that way. So that's where those colors kind of come into play. I don't think it's super obvious, but that's where you'll find it in your NinjaTrader platform. And again, you can have actions set up so that if you right click on this field, you can go to templates and you can save it as a default. So that way, every time you create an alert, you can always have a pop up in the sound, which I find useful. And then I'll add in the alert conditions I want to get emails for, because maybe some are more important than others, right? So alerts are definitely handy. If you look at our pattern one, we alert you to all the patterns in the market. So every single pattern is going to have an alert condition for every single time frame. And all of these, and this is, I think, a mistake that is pretty common, because you get to your alerts by right-clicking on your market analyzer, going to alerts. People think that this is saved as part of your market analyzer template, and it's not. This is actually saved into your workspace, because you can set alerts on your chart level and not your market analyzer, right? So it's going to be more of a global thing within NinjaTrader, where you can have those alerts on different charts or market analyzer templates or other like mini charts or tiles or anything else, right? So everything's going to be included into your workspace file for alerts and not the market analyzer template. So just remember that when it comes to saving it, because a lot of this stuff will take you a while to set up, to be honest, right? To get to the way you want it. You don't want to have to redo those things. So even once you've done that, even once you've saved your template for your market analyzer, take these files that are in your NinjaTrader directory underneath your templates folder and back them up somewhere, so that way, if you ever need to restore an NinjaTrader, you need to do something where you're replacing it, or maybe a file got accidentally deleted or corrupted. It's very easy to put all that work that you did back into NinjaTrader without it being a lot of work, right? It's all saved and you've had that backed up. So definitely make sure that that you do that for your workspace and your market analyzer, but that should give you at least some alerting conditions. Now, if you go back into your columns, you can come down to any of these RSI or whatever you've created, and you can create filter conditions. Okay, so filter conditions, we can just add one again at the very bottom, small text, but it says add. And you can apply this to basically anything. So basically this says we're gonna hide the row if RSI is equal to whatever. So maybe you wanna hide it if it's not in the red or it's not in the green. So it's gonna hide this entire row unless it's red or unless it's green. So now that's not gonna make a whole lot of sense for what we're doing in this example, but perhaps it's something where you only want to see, maybe you have a market analyzer that displays profit or loss or something, right? Where you only want to see instruments where you actually hold a position, whether it's a profit or for a loss, but you don't need to see anything that doesn't show you or that you don't have a position in. Then maybe that makes sense, right? Maybe you have a market analyzer for that. And you can have different market analyzer windows. So maybe you have one that is based off a profit loss, how big your position is, like stuff that's more account related. And then you have another one for scanning. Maybe you have one for scanning long-term time frames, like the 4 hour, the daily, the weekly, and maybe you have another one that's going to be scanning 5 minutes and tick charts and stuff like that. That's going to be super small, right? You can have them all running along the bottom where you have different market analyzers, or you can have them in different windows depending on how that's being placed on your screen and in your workspace, right? So you can have different market analyzers that do different things. And I think them adding the tabs, I don't know how long you guys have been using NinjaTrader for, but they didn't always have tabs, has made this very useful. Now, one of the things that you'll probably also want to do is link this to some of your charts. So in the top right, you can actually pick a color, and then in any chart, you can set that as whatever that color would be, right? So if you click on an instrument, then it's going to change it to whatever that chart is. You can see my background, it's changing to whatever instrument I'm picking. Now, that's great, but if I'm selecting RSI on the 1 minute, you can still see that this is crude. It changed it to crude, but it's on a daily chart. It's not on my 1 minute. It's not picking up that exact cell. And that's one of the things that we've asked them to do for the next release, the next major release. I think it's in NT9, because I believe, and I don't know this, but I believe that the market analyzer would have to be recoded for them to do something like that, to add in an interval link. So not an instrument, but an interval, so it actually changes the time frame. Now, with that being said, you don't have to just use time frames. If you want to change that to maybe like some sort of a range bar or something like that, you can come in here and you can change any of these settings so that you can say, okay, well, I'm not going to be using a minute chart. I'm going to be using a volume chart, and therefore I want something else to be displayed. That's all totally up to you. And again, I know people that use different chart types together. So again, you might have a market analyzer that has time frames, or you might have another one that has range bars, or you might have another, you get the idea, right? You can do basically anything you want. So it's up to you on how you want to lay it out. What I want to do in this live session, I won't keep things too long, is just talk about the cell conditions, the filtering, how to add stuff in, some of the columns that you might not have thought of that might be useful, and do templates so that you know how to reproduce columns easily. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's about it. So Frank, hopefully we answer that question for you about how that works with the alert log. And but if you guys have any others, or if you're watching this as a recording, by all means type them in the comment section. I'll get back to you on that. Next week, if you didn't catch the beginning, we're going to be doing a live stream on how to do it with order keys or hotkeys, but not just buy and sell with a hotkey, but how you do a buy hotkey with a certain position size or ATM attached to it. So we're scheduling that right now for the same time next week, but probably keep an eye on the YouTube channel in case anything was to change. But yeah, if you guys like this sort of stuff, I mean, let me know some way, somehow. And you can whack that thumbs up button, or you can type in a comment or do something so I know that it is what you guys are wanting to do. Otherwise, we will see, well, for you guys that are members, we'll see you in our next live stream, which is going to be tomorrow. For those of you who are watching us through the YouTube, we will see you guys probably next Monday. All right, guys, take care. All the best. And we will talk soon. Cheers.